Welcome into Slaughterhouse and Rover Sports, and a longtime friend of the show joins me. It is Jetscentral and JC. It's great to see you again, man, and it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. I'm pumped I'm pumped for the draft. I think there's going to be a ton of really uh, kind of crazy storylines that pan out on night one.
For sure, and a lot of people, JC, have said that this is kind of like a weaker draft. And are you kind of sick of hearing about that?
I think it's actually pretty like once you get beyond round one, I feel like it's pretty strong in rounds 2 and 3. But I see what people are saying as far as like, maybe the wide receivers aren't as talented as last year. The offensive tackles aren't as talented as last year. Like there are like a lot of positions where you can maybe look at and say like, okay, the wide receiver 1 this year is probably the wide receiver 5 or 6 last year. And again, multiple positions that you can kind of do that with. But I'm really excited for the defensive linemen and the corners.
Yeah, it seems like a really good D line class. I'm just again during this exercise, guys. Again, you could visit Jet Central on Jet Central's channel, but you cover broad NFL, and I know that you love college football like I do. I'm just gonna get to the chase. Like, let's talk about the Georgia defensive lineman. Let's talk about Javon Walker, I think Jalen Walker, and let's talk about Mykel Williams. And Mykel Williams, I've seen go as early as 9, as early as 7, and as late as 20. So what do you think about those Georgia guys?
Yeah, I think they're really interesting. It's kind of funny because even though they were both, pretty productive and impressive players last year, I think their play styles are like, or how they project to the next level are pretty different. Like when I'm thinking about Jalen Walker, he's like that stand-up rusher, right? You can kind of deploy him on really wherever you want. Like I'm thinking like a system like Carolina obviously would make a ton of sense, like 3-4, Avero as DC. That team needs help at linebacker. They need help at rushing the passer, and they need that kind of like defensive energizer bunny. And I feel like Jalen Walker, would come in and check all 3 of those boxes. But with Mykel Williams, that's like, in my opinion, like a 4-3 strong side defensive end, right? Setting the edge, stopping the run, pass rushing upside. I like both players a lot, man.
Yeah, I think like Mykel can be pretty decent, but again, like a lot of these guys' production is just like kind of inconsistent. Same with like even Mykel Williams. So yeah, the defensive line group is kind of fascinating. So when we look at this draft, JC, we pretty much have Abdul Carter Hunter, Cam Ward going pretty early in this draft. But I think the most interesting teams might be Jacksonville, might be the Raiders and the Jets, and that quadrant right there. So I'm going to ask you about some of these prospects, okay? What do you think
Yeah.
about Tyler Warren compared to a guy like Banks, who's the first name in the Texas offensive tackle? It's Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin Banks. Yeah.
What do you think? How would you compare like a Warren and a Banks?
For what team? The Jets at 7?
I would just say maybe as prospects, and then yeah, we'll go with the Jets at 7.
Okay. So the internet is a little choppy. Did you say Tyler Warren before?
Yes, Tyler Warren and Banks. Yes, because I've
Yeah.
seen both of those guys.
Yeah. It seems like Warren, I mean, man, there's just so many strengths to his game, right? The size, the athleticism, the toughness, the physicality off the field, production last season. You can line him up wherever. I really feel like whoever Tyler Warren goes to, your team is going to be getting much, much better. Like on offense, you're getting more creative. You're getting a playmaker. You're getting someone that, obviously helps out the quarterback who's ever throwing the football, whether that's, Justin Fields, it's at 7, Bryce Young, spot number 8. Like Tyler Warren just kind of raises the floor, in my opinion, for any offense out there. Kelvin Banks, I feel like that's more so the guy where it's like, okay, do you run an offensive system where it really prioritizes like offensive lineman athleticism, right? Getting these guys like moving, which is why I think we see a lot of mock drafts with Banks going to Miami at 13, like that Mike McDonald style of system, right? Really kind of maximizing Banks's skill set. and also too like the 49ers. So I like Banks a lot. I feel like every time I talk about him with the 49ers, people are like, that's way too high for him. So who knows where he's going to end up. But I personally like both prospects. But, I think when it's all said and done, they'll both be top 15 picks.
I got to tell you, like, I really like Banks. And if you think about him, JC, he was a 5-star out of the Houston area. Last year, like when you went through this exercise, he was the projected number 1 tackle. And I even think he might even have more strengths than Will Campbell. Like he's just as athletic. I even see him possibly going to the Jets. I think he can end up being one of the best tackles. And then you have a guy, I'll tell you who's improved in the draft process. It's Armand Membu from Missouri, has really improved. But I'm a little scared because I feel like the jump is so high, and I don't want it to be like a Mekhi Becton, or even the Panthers drafted that offensive tackle at 7 a couple of years ago, and I think he's been shaky. I think I think Banks has like been on our radar longer. And what do you think about Membu though? I mean, I see him in the top 10 a lot. What do you think about that player?
Yeah, dude, I like Membu a lot. Membu's probably my number one choice for the Jets at spot number 7. I prefer Membu over Will Campbell for sure. Will Campbell's like wingspan, the arm length, it kind of I don't want to take like I have nothing against Will Campbell, nothing against LSU, but what I'm thinking about Will Campbell and like what he's going to be at the next level, could he be a tackle? Sure, but I do feel like he's probably going to be more so that guard. And I don't feel comfortable taking like, a guard who I don't know if he's going to be a top 5 guard ever. Do I feel comfortable taking a player like that in the top 10? Probably not.
1,000,000%. I mean, because by the way, like I heard a good draft analysis about Campbell. Like he's damn upright. I don't even know if he'll be a good guard.
Mhm.
JC, because like Eric Flowers, like I don't even know if Campbell's even going to be a good guard. So it's a damn big risk. I mean, the character of Campbell though, like he's a beast. That's why he seems like a variable guy. I mean, he like is like the leader of your team. Like the way he interviews, the way that he like galvanized LSU is like totally awesome. And then he's kind of athletic. So he has to be a finesse kind of guy. He's a big risk. I'll tell you the most polarizing guy that fan bases don't like. Okay. I'm going to go through the list of guys, JC, that are like the polarizing guys where the fans will roll their eyes. And you, I think, are going to like some of these players. So at number 5, right? And you got me now. The internet's better.
Yeah. So it'll like pop out every like 10 minutes or every like 10 seconds, but you come back on pretty quick.
Okay. Jacksonville, Mason Graham is kind of like Will Campbell in that the athleticism doesn't pop and it's not the sexiest name. Okay. So I don't think fans are that excited about I don't think they're excited about Mason Graham. Ted McMillan has also been really slighted in this draft process. They say he really doesn't separate all that well. I would really say Mason Graham is just like Will Campbell, is kind of like people don't see the ceiling and the fan bases don't get excited.
Yeah, I do think Graham has a higher floor than Campbell. Like I could see Campbell just not working out. But like Graham, I always kind of feel like will be an NFL starting type of player. But what's interesting too about Mason Graham is like on the Michigan website, he was listed at 320 pounds. And then when he weighed into the combine, he was what was it, like 297 or something. So he was like down like 20-ish pounds. And so when I'm thinking about like future run stuff, and granted that weight can, come back up, obviously, but when I'm thinking about like Mason Graham at the next level, I don't know if he's going to be like the team's like primary run stuffer. Like to me, he's more so like that pass rushing D tackle, which is cool. But yeah, I see what you're saying about maybe fan bases not being so, because like there's so many like high ceiling guys like Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys like that. And Mason Graham just kind of feels like he's the safe pick.
Exactly. So you have Jeanty. Believe it or not, JC, I kind of agree with you about Tyler Warren. If I were the Jags, let's just talk about Jacksonville at 5. Warren would be my pick. If I were the Jets and even Carolina, by the way, Carolina could even take Jeanty. Like when we're talking about best, player available, I don't get why Tyler Warren like isn't an option for almost anybody. Even if you're the 49ers, JC, you have an aging George Kittle. Why don't you think like Warren should be slotted in for so many teams? And even if you're Liam Cohen specifically, why wouldn't the Jags take Tyler Warren?
I think it's more so why would you take a tight end that early? It's just something that doesn't really happen all that often. Like Bowers was regarded as one of, if not the greatest tight end prospect ever coming out. And he goes 13 to the Raiders. And, it's tight end is one of those positions where it's like not 100% locked in. Like you have kind of flashbacks to like Ebron, OJ Howard is another guy. Noah Fant hasn't really like Noah Fant's okay, but he's not really like a, top 5 tight end. Definitely not worth where they picked him. So, I think maybe that is factoring in, as well as this draft class is pretty loaded at tight end. Fannin, Arroyo from Miami, who I really like. Loveland as well.
I think that after Loveland, I'm scared about the next tight end now. I think it could fall off pretty quick.
I like Arroyo from Miami. He's like super athletic.
Yeah, Arroyo's pretty decent. I even maybe like Arroyo better than Jason Taylor's kid, but he's going to get taken pretty high. Mason. And then we also have like Ferguson, pretty decent player, in the latter half. So just talking to you, JC, and again, like we've done a show a lot of years, and I'll text you about the draft. One of your guys that's just like fallen in this draft process that you're probably rolling your eyes at. What about Will Johnson from Michigan, man? He was a top 10 guy. And isn't it kind of curious how some guys like Will Johnson just are like falling off a map kind of?
Yeah, dude, it's really crazy. I mean, sometimes, and it's not to say that Will Johnson is like the perfect prospect. Like there are flaws, there are concerns, but when I'm thinking about Will Johnson, like, man, when he was out there and he was healthy, he just looked so smooth. Like man coverage, zone coverage, off coverage, press coverage. He's making all, and, to be fair, like Michigan does have like a lot of talent around him, but I just felt like he was like such like a silky smooth player, being able to just read the quarterback, just identify what's happening and make plays on the football. I think if he's healthy, he's a safe player. If there's concerns about, durability and he's only going to be, he's essentially, you don't want to draft a guy like that if he's going to be missing time every single year. He's playing like 12 games a season. Okay, if you have that concern, then I'm fine with you passing. But, I don't know. I really like the upside with Will Johnson. Like you just watch any sort of Michigan game when he's out there, he just seems so NFL ready, in my opinion.
For sure. And so right now during this exercise, I want to talk about guys in this first round that like you absolutely love. Like it might be a Malachi Starks and Eamon Wari. Like, what are your favorite team fits, and who are some of those teams? Because you love the New York Jets first and foremost, but what like kind of like under the radar builds do you like? Do you like Arizona? Do you like a team fit for Seattle? Who are some mid-first round guys where you're like, this guy should be a top 7 guy and we're getting great value here at like 21?
Dude, great question. So yeah, let's just talk about maybe some of the prospects that stand out. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. Malachi Starks, dude, he's one of my favorite players. Ball hawking safety. He's played slot corner. Like he's just like this movable guy that you could kind of just like if you're a defensive coordinator out there and you're like, we could use extra safety. We can use an extra, like leader on this defense. Malachi Starks to me just feels like such a high floor type of player, but he's like falling because he's like a safety and he's not this like athletic freak show like Eamon Wari. So I think people just look at Starks like, okay, well, how much of an impact is he actually going to have on the game? I mean, we saw Brian Branch fall. We've seen really good, really productive safeties just fall in the draft just because of like the position that they play in.
Yeah.
But dude, I love Starks. I have other prospects too. Guys that just stand out. Michael Williams is one of those guys. I just really love his game. I feel like he should be talked about as like a top 12-ish pick. But I'm seeing mock drafts with him going into into the late 20s with like the Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers. I feel like Michael is a lot better then slipping down into like the late 20s like that. One guy who I really like is Ezaraku from Boston College.
Okay. A little
Do you know
smaller.
him at all or no?
He's smaller, but like, is he really quick? Like Ezaraku?
So he has just a ton of different pass rushing moves, and he has like this big time motor. And I feel like Washington, like bottom round one, would just be a sweet addition for Donovan.
And they also got the big boy from Illinois last year. So haven't they got like some D line guys on Washington's D line?
Yeah, dude. I mean, if you just look at the Commanders' depth chart, it's just like not in a disrespectful way, but it's just like they can really use an edge rusher. Like Ezra would probably be the best pass rusher on the team from the outside.
Yeah. So he's like, I guess he's like a smaller and he's like a 4-3 kind of a guy, right?
What do you mean 4-3?
Meaning like he's like a lineman, not like this Jalen Walker linebacker hybrid.
So I'm personally, I feel like he could play whichever. So I thought you were talking about the 40 time. I'm like, dude, that'd be crazy if a defensive end ran a 4-3. No, I think he's good enough to play in either, because I think really where he shines is right in that moment of like the point of attack, essentially. And I think if he's kind of a stand-up rusher, which he did a lot of back with, this past season with Boston College, or if you just kind of line him up out wide, like I'm thinking of like him with the Lions or the Commanders, I think he would have success there. I don't see his like production like completely like falling off a cliff depending on the scheme.
Right. JC, I'm gonna ask you again. We only have JC. This is so much fun, man. I could probably cover an hour of draft talk. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask, like, you have Mykel Williams, you have Jahdae Barron. Really, I guess it's Mykel Williams, James Pierce, and Mike Green. So I feel like these defensive ends that get shifted towards the bottom of the first round, a lot of it, I'm not saying on anything specifically. It might just be motor. It might be how they interview personality wise. Like, can you get the most out of these guys? Because Jalen Walker, the reason, my theory why he's been in the top 8 is because he's a team leader. He's so well spoken. He's so easy to get along with. So I think that these guys are mysterious fallers because of that. Like Walter Nolan could be 12 or he could be in the second round. How about Adonai Mitchell? Personality concern, falling out. Like, isn't that kind of what you're thinking? Because like James Pierce, just how inconsistent are these mocks with some of these guys?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the crazy thing is like you'll see someone go 13 to Miami, or get Chargers at 22, Pittsburgh at 21, and then the next mock draft they're out of the first round completely. One edge rusher though that we haven't talked about is Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, who I think is like the most polarizing player in the entire draft.
Yeah, I kind of am a little bit out on Stewart.
Okay, just the sack production.
A little bit inconsistent. I hope that like if the work ethic is there, like it could really work. But I'm trying to think like Tyree Wilson, maybe of the Raiders, kind of like I thought he was going to be so good. Colleen Farrell, like out of Clemson, maybe had the production. So Stewart, I guess he's like a D tackle. Stewart.
He's a DN, but he lined up a D tackle. I mean, he's so big and athletic that they moved him around the A&M D line with working with, of course, Elko, our guy, former Duke head coach. But I think I think defensive minded head coaches and DCs are really going to look at Shamar Stewart and be like, hey, I want to work with this guy.
I just worry it could be like Kinlaw, where he's just inconsistent. And I worry. I'll tell you, I like Nick Scoreton from Texas A&M.
Yeah, dude. I really liked him back when he was with Purdue.
Yeah, and A&M has all these guys on the defensive line, that are really sensational players. We're going to wrap this up with this question, okay? This is my one, I guess, nitpick with the draft community. Recently, Jackson Dart has gone from a first round guy, and now you're getting wind he's not attending the draft. And some guys that have been mocking him, JC, in the first round, they're just like suddenly saying, oh, well, he's a second round guy. Or how about this? How about Will Howard? Like you hear some draft panelists say he's not going to be there in the third round. And then these guys kind of weasel out of their opinions. By 2 weeks later, they say Will Howard, he'll be a good backup, in the sixth round. So I feel like these quarterbacks, Dart and Will Howard, I feel like the draft community is inconsistent in these final 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think a big reason, unfortunately, like why we have that, it's like because like a lot of people in the media, they'll come up with their big boards and stuff. And I think the big boards, of course it's their own opinion and takes, but there is, I feel like, a section of influence of, hey, I'm talking to teams, I'm talking to GMs, I'm talking to coaches. So I don't want to necessarily put together like my personal big board. And then it's being like shown on NFL Network or, it's being shown on draft night. And it's like, oh, the Saints at pick number 9 just selected my 46th ranked player, or my 11th player in the draft is still on the board in the third round. You know what I mean?
Right. I
So it
completely
kind of has
understand.
to correlate in some way.
So you're right. You're absolutely right. And like a guy like Omarion Hampton, who I think is an okay running back, who I'd maybe honestly have in the high second round or maybe late second, I'm going to bump him up to a fringe first so that it correlates with Mel Kiper's best available.
Yeah.
So a million percent that. All right, gosh, I can't help it. One more question. I'm just going to say this. I think Ty Robinson might be my steal if I had to think of a third round steal. Who's a steal?
Really?
Yeah, Ty Robinson, Nebraska defensive tackle.
Yeah, dude, he just feels like he's like a relentless, like watching him, he's just like a relentless pass rusher. Just plays whistle to whistle, which I really, really like. Super physical.
Yeah, twitchy. And yes, exactly. Like played on those teams, like lost a lot, but like still like stayed loyal and has the physical nature. So who's kind of like that third round guy for you?
I like Jalen Reed from Penn State, the safety. Just like a big time hitter, good in run support, makes plays, against the run. I find his game pretty fascinating. There's a couple guys. I think Gunnar Helm is kind of interesting too from Texas. The tight end, big receiving threat. Mm-hmm. But kind of the big concern with him is just like putting muscle on. I mean, to get specific, like putting muscle on his lower half. Because I've heard a lot of people kind of in the draft community talk about like they fear he's going to go down pretty quickly. Like once like linebackers and defensive backs get their hands on him, because he's not like the strongest guy out there, but he's definitely someone who I can feel like who I could see maybe going to like a playoff ready team. And all of a sudden he's kind of making plays as like this tight end 2. And by year 2 or 3, he's like the tight end 1 potentially, similar to like Mark Andrews a little bit. Like he was a 4th round guy, and I mean a lot of these really good tight ends are just kind of mid round guys. Kittle was a mid rounder, Kelsey was a mid rounder.
Well, Laporte of Iowa. I mean, I guess that was the second rounder, the guy from Iowa, and like even Pitts like hasn't popped, but yeah, you're so right, kind of about like you can find that value. There's a guy out of Kentucky at the Senior Bowl who's a defensive tackle who's huge. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, Deion Walker. Yeah.
yeah. That would be a really fun 4th round like swing.
Definitely.
Because then you know what you get in the 4th round are some of your favorite guys. Like you'll get a Jeffrey Bassa that might not start for you, but Jeff Bassa played at Oregon and was the team leader and is the intangible. He's like a Matthew Slater. So, like, you'll either get the super high character linebackers, right? Or the total physical tool prospects that can pop, like Deion Walker,
Yeah, it's funny, dude, because I guess it really just comes down to like general manager preferences, like who or like just environment versus team need versus, ceiling and floor, where these guys are going to go. Because if like Deion Walker gets drafted by like Philly or like one of these like well-coached teams, Pittsburgh or Baltimore or something, like you're kind of like, you have the hunch of like, okay, maybe there's a plan here and this guy could actually pop, as opposed to if he goes to a team, picking like up towards the top of a round and there's maybe like uncertainty around the coaching staff, it's just like, okay, it's kind of like a wait and see type of thing.
They just leave. It sucks. Like Perry on Winfrey, like bam, they're playing in they're playing in USFL or something. And yeah, then it gets sad and they don't get publicized if they fall through the cracks. But anyway, man, it was awesome. Enjoy the draft. I can't freaking wait,
Yeah, dude, it's gonna be a lot of fun, man. Thanks for having me on. We
Yeah,
gotta do it again.
Jetscentral, everybody. Yeah, thanks so much for joining.